Hello and welcome to Locator Gaming. I'm Zach. So today I wanted to talk about something that I've been thinking about for quite a while because, most of the stuff that's on my channel is board game and painting of board game miniatures, like related stuff. But I also kind of follow a little bit of tabletop wargaming. And in the tabletop wargaming, you hear a lot about something called miniatures agnostic games. And it got me thinking about this topic of we have a lot of board games now that we have a lot of minis for. And some of these minis we don't use very much, even in the board game that they come from. Like Tainted Grail, for example. There were some minis in that didn't live on the board for very long. But what it got me thinking is people who have a lot of these campaign board games now that have all these miniatures, what can we do with these miniatures after we're done with them for the board game? And miniatures agnostic games came to mind. I mean, we have tons of these campaign games now. And I've got some notes off to the side, and I wrote down some, and I pulled out just a couple that I have in trays around here. Like this is a tray of my Painted Descent stuff. This is from Madara that I'm not done painting yet. I haven't even started playing that yet. I've got some Stars of Ikarios figures here for some sci-fi stuff, but you've got Journeys in Middle-earth that has a bunch of miniatures in it. Look at my list. You got Sword and Sorcery. Oathsworn is one that has a lot of nice miniatures and some terrain in it. Even if you have Imperial Assault, you've got some sci-fi miniatures there. Nemesis has some cool alien-looking miniatures in it, and some human sci-fi miniatures in there. Blood Rage, even games like Zombicide will have a ton of miniatures. And then there's even older games, there was a bunch of D&D games that had a ton of little figures in them that I have some stuff for that I'm probably going to be planning on using in some of my miniatures agnostic games. So what is a miniatures agnostic game? Miniatures agnostic game is a game that you can use any miniatures to play. They're mostly more like tabletop war games, but some of them do have campaigns and stuff in them. And I'm going to show a couple of them to you. All right, so I've laid out a couple of these miniatures agnostic games. Some of these you might have heard of, like Frostgrave and Stargrave. Frostgrave and Rangers of Shadowdeep, these are fantasy-based ones, and then Stargrave and Space Station Zero are sci-fi-based ones. Frostgrave and Stargrave, I think were more started kind of like two-player games, like two-player head-to-head, but there is solo rules that you can use for them, and you could play them solo. Quarantine 37 is the book that has the solo and campaign stuff in it, and there are campaign books for both of these. The same author did Stargrave, Frostgrave, and Rangers of Shadowdeep, Joseph McCulloch. Rangers of Shadowdeep is more of the solo game that has a campaign through it, where you play as a ranger and you combine a team of other types of characters. And that's why these games are cool, because while these do have miniatures lines that they sell with them, you don't have to use the miniatures to play these games. If you had a cool character, like for Frostgrave, you're gonna get a wizard and an apprentice and then get another team around them. If you really liked the wizard character from the Descent game, and you don't have to paint them, but if you painted it up real nice and you're like, man, I really want to use this miniature in another game, he could be your wizard in a Frostgrave campaign. Or if you have a really nice ranger, like if you like the Huntress from Oathsworn and you really want to use her in another game because you're done playing Oathsworn, maybe she could be your lead ranger in Rangers of Shadowdeep. For the sci-fi games, Space Station Zero is a solo-only campaign story game. It's another one where you're going to put together a little ship crew. You're not really going to be on your ship. Like the story of this one is that you get transported to some space station way out in the middle of space, and your crew is on this space station with a bunch of other crews, and you're just trying to explore and figure out what you're doing there. So you pick a captain and you pick a little crew of either 4, 6, or 8 figures, and you go through the campaign, the story. I'm probably going to be using some of the Stars of Ikarios miniatures for this, and maybe some old Imperial Assault miniatures or some Star Wars Legion miniatures. I'm going to be playing the first mission of this and posting it along with this particular video so you can see what a miniatures agnostic game is like. These are not the only ones. I have a list of some other ones that I found online. So Space Station Zero was made by Uncle Adam, who has a YouTube channel, and Vince Venturella, I think is how you say his last name. He also has a YouTube channel, and he's a pretty well-known miniatures painter. They also did another game called Rain in Hell, which is a miniatures agnostic game that didn't start out as solo or co-op, but they created a expansion for it that makes it solo and co-op. It's another like head-to-head skirmish game that you can use any miniatures you want for. There's a company called One Page Rules that makes a bunch of miniatures agnostic games that are kind of like some of the Games Workshop games, big army games and little skirmish games where you don't need a whole lot of models to play. There's a game called Zona Alpha. There's Song of Blade and Heroes. There's another one, 5 Parsecs from Home. I believe Colin from One Stop Co-op Shop did a playthrough of 5 Parsecs from Home on his channel. So if you're interested in these kind of miniatures agnostic games, you could check his playthrough out as well. One of the best things about this is, you know, we've spent sometimes on these Kickstarters hundreds of dollars on these games and got these miniatures, used them in the board game, and now what? Well, these were not that expensive, maybe $20 or so, $30 for the book for the rules. The Space Station Zero book, $18 for this book and the PDF combined. $18 plus shipping. I mean, when was the last time you bought a new complete campaign game in our board game space for $18? I bet never. There are some things that you need to play these games. You're going to need some dice, probably more than D6. You might need some D12s or D20s or some of the other dice like D10s. It depends on the game. If you're a D&D player, maybe you have some of those things, but you might not have those around. You might have to get that. You are going to need probably a measuring tape to play as well. And most of the games need some kind of terrain. But let's talk about terrain. Okay, so these games are going to need some kind of terrain, I think, in order for you to get the right kind of feel. Now, for these board games that I've been talking about, we're mostly used to just flat cardboard little squares or circles or whatever that go onto our boards that represent terrain. We have seen some terrain in some of the recent games. Descent had some 3D terrain in it. Oathsworn has come with some terrain, and Heroes Quest, if you got the new Heroes Quest, or if you still have the old Heroes Quest, that's like the old school board game terrain in the original Heroes Quest. So you might have some kind of terrain laying around, but you don't have to be scared, and you don't have to invest a ton of money in, you don't have to invest any money in terrain if you don't want to. I've laid out here some examples of stuff. This could be a board. All you need is some way to cut up the board and have some cover. I've got a Dragon Shield box, you know, like an empty cookie box, deck case for a card game, you know, some Chessex dice things here. This is the container that the big monster from Descent came in out of, you know, the new Descent game. And, you know, like a roll of tape, you know, this could be like a fluid container or gas container, oil container or something if you're playing a sci-fi game. This could be your board. It could be that simple as look around the house. If you start getting into these games, and I've been noticing it recently as I've been looking into it, like seeing things around the house, like my daughter was eating these cookies, I was like, don't throw that box away. I want that box. I saw this tape in the garage. I was like, well, let me use that tape. So you could start out with just stuff from around the house, just to put it on the board, break it up for some cover. Some of the games will outline ways to set up the terrain, and other games will just give you a general idea of, you know, you should have this many pieces of terrain somewhere around the board for these sections of the board. For this number of players or for this particular scenario, you might need this or this. You also might need some little things to count as like little tokens or objective points or areas of interest or things like that. You could start here, and then if you really like it, then you can start, you know, enhancing some things. And they don't even have to be like super fancy. Like, I'll show you some things. This is not like the greatest stuff ever made in the world, but I was just having some fun one day, finding some stuff to convert into some terrain. So this is like an old almond container. So here's like the almond lid, and I spray painted it and put some coffee stirrers and put a little piece of plastic and painted it, and now I've got like a little oil or fuel container thing. These are coffee stirrers that I cut up and put some Agrath's Earthshade on to stain them to be like a pile of pallets laying around. Also coffee stirrers that were stained and made into like a bridge if I wanted to do a bridge somewhere. This was probably one of my funner ones that I worked on. It's just cardboard and corrugated cardboard, paper, and coffee stirrers made to look like a shipping container for a sci-fi game. This is a box that came out of Euthia that had the metal coins in it. I was like, I'll put some coffee stirrers for a little ladder on the side, spray painted gray, put a little bit of orange rust on the top, and now I've got like just a little sci-fi another level. And then I got this one. This was a Pepsi can that I added a little piece of plastic to, and some rust and some paint, and it's a little bit of cardboard to act as another like little kind of fuel thing. So, I mean, like I said, this was just for fun. It's not the greatest terrain in the world. I spent zero money on this stuff because I already had this spray paint stuff from when I'm doing, you know, painting my other miniatures. I didn't spend zero money. This little pattern here was 75 cents. It's like a thing you get at the craft store that people use to make little pictures out of yarn. Like they knit yarn through these to make pictures, and it was 75 cents. So I shouldn't say I spent no money. But I mean, like I said, you don't have to go this far unless you realize, hey, I really like these kind of games, and you really get into one of them and you're like, I want to enhance the look of my board. Just use regular stuff and enjoy the system, enjoy the story, enjoy playing with your miniatures, you know, your little toy soldiers. Okay, in conclusion, I mean, I brought the books back out. I'll just say, like I said, I just wanted to post this real quick. I don't do a whole lot of vlogs and things like these. I only did a couple early on in the channel to talk about things. Usually it's just gameplay and lately some live stream painting stuff. But if you're looking at another thing to do with all these miniatures that some of us have been accumulating on these recent games that we've been getting, you know, from Kickstarter, some not from Kickstarter, like the Sense, not a Kickstarter game. But look at Miniatures Agnostic Games. It's another place you can use your miniatures. And like I said, they're cheap, 18 bucks for Space Station Zero. You use stuff laying around the house for terrain. You know, hopefully you already have the dice that you need for the game, and you probably got a tape measure somewhere around the house. So, okay, I'll also be posting, like I said, along with this one, a gameplay of Space Station Zero. I don't know in the future if I'll do any other ones. I might do some Rangers of Shadow Deep. I've got some miniatures that I was painting up from another game, I think from one of those D&D games I was talking about, to use for Rangers of Shadow Deep. So I might be posting this, an example of this later on. But when this one goes up, there'll be Space Station Zero gameplay along with it. And okay, I hope you enjoyed this information about Miniatures Agnostic Games. I hope you enjoy everything I post up on the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.